and serves us well. So a small biopsy of human skin can generate enough primary cells in cultures to generate sheets that can cover several baseball fields in surface, and that is currently being used in burn units where we actually grow autologous cells and apply them to patients to actually aid in their wound healing. So if you think about the potential, it's really remarkable of what skin as an organ does. In addition to that, many of you have heard how this was a landmark year of 2007 when a skin cell scientist independently in two different parts of the world, Yamanaka and Thompson labs, have come up with a protocol where they can use and use adult skin cell and really turn it into induced pluripotent stem cell or embryonic-like stem cell and now become really a potential to generate different tissues. So from an adult skin cell with 4 different genes, slightly different from 2 different cocktails and 2 different labs, but an adult somatic skin cell can really be changed into embryonic stem cell and then give rise to different tissues and differentiated into different things. So if you think about this conceptual potential of regenerative medicine and tissue repair that comes from skin, it really is remarkable of how the wound healing process occurs throughout lifetime. And it is really a coordinated cellular process that really aims at nothing else but barrier restoration. What I was fascinated about is that you can take that human skin off the body, put it in the incubator, maintain it on the air-liquid interface, and then if you wound that skin will heal. So this is right autopilot. So the cells really do know how to close the wound and how to really enter this evolutionary conserved process of barrier restoration. You can take this process one step away and then take the skin pieces apart to its individual cellular compartments and grow keratinocytes and fibroblasts in culture that reconstruct three-dimensionally that tissue and actually make a skin in the petri dish. And if you wound that skin will heal as the slides are showing. So you could actually see this leading edge of epithelium crawling over the dermal side and really closing the gap. So the cells really do know what to do on their own without any of our help. And how is this process achieved? The basics are clearly it's not a simple process. And that is both exciting and difficult when you have to deal with treatment development, because obviously when you have multiple cells and multiple factors, it becomes a lot of more complicated story. So when a wound happens, keratinocytes release pre-stored interleukin-1. And that is important because this is sort of a big signal to the surrounding tissue that the barrier has been broken and the pathogens were coming in. And I think that if you think about these cells, they're equipped to really very profoundly, robustly alert everybody of their neighbors, if you want, that the barrier has been broken. And in response to that, a lot of things happen. Keratinocytes start moving and proliferating, obviously to close the gap. Fibroblasts start proliferating and lay down the matrix. Endothelial cells start sprouting blood vessels and sort of the form of angiogenesis. Macrophages are moving in to clear up the infection. All of these cells are very, very important, and they're very, very well coordinated in timely fashion in order to close this wound. And of course, how does that happen? Well, through the crosstalk among these cells with wonderful emails and cell phones and all the gadgets that they have, which are called growth factors, cytokines, and chemokines. So they talk to each other and they stimulate each other in the right way, in a really timed response, in a well-coordinated manner. So how, if we actually deal with this extraordinarily tissue that can heal on and perpetually does that through our lifetime, how can we then face this in our clinical side. So we are now in the midst of epidemic of chronic wounds, and so worldwide there are data out there that shows that there are every 30 seconds part of the limb, lower limb, is amputated due to diabetes. And I think as this is the data from 2005, and as we're coming towards this age now, I think the time is even shorter. So with all this ability that we have, and technology and knowledge and science and everything that we have in our toolboxes, how can we use amputation as a clinical approach? That is simply not acceptable. And so the focus of my lab is really to try to understand why wounds don't heal. In a clinical arena, we are faced with a lot of products that are safe to use, but they do not reach the FDA threshold of clinical efficacy. And very few products have reached that, and they actually don't have all that great successful rate. So clearly, we are facing with a tremendous clinical burden that really did not come up with solutions or treatment approaches yet in this big fashion. So we are trying to do anything and best possible we can for our patients, but I think in general there is a lot more that can be done. So the question really is why wounds don't heal, and if you want slightly more daring, why the cells lost their magic, to be in line with the title. And so we decided to use the approach, and I teamed up with an extraordinary team of clinical scientists, and one of which is Harold Graham, and currently in Winthrop University Hospital, and one is Robert Kerzner at University of Miami. These are the incredible physicians who actually treat these patients. And Olivera Sredinovich, who has been working in my lab for a long time, first as a fellow and now as a junior faculty, who actually participated in majority of the studies that I will show you today. So what we decided to do is collect the biopsies in one study with Dr. Graham, to collect the biopsies from venous ulcer, non-healing edge of the wound, and really standardize these biopsies by histology and immunocytochemistry and do microarrays. And the study with Dr. Kerzner, what we have done is we selected patients who are non-healers venous ulcers and healing venous ulcers, and then compared the two. So again, we implemented clinical outcome in our design before we actually did microarrays. And so I will show you the summary, but before that I have to make a slight digression, and I think it's towards the students that I really love, and fellows who are yet to face the study section world and grant application world. And this is from the NR, this is the grant that actually National Institute of Nursing Research has funded, but this was before, the one submission before the one that got funded. And basically when I proposed to do global prescriptional analysis of wound healing, one reviewer said it's simply not possible. So this is really a very important sort of dance, and you will receive a lot of reviews in your life from grants and papers, and every single one of them does influence you in many ways. So once you set and check your ego aside and really start looking into the message, well, to me the message was really clear. He said, you know what, I'll believe it when I see it. And so what I decided is really to do this and resubmit the grant after I have done the initial studies, and of course the grant was funded, and here I am today, because everything I have to say really started with that original grant and the original in study. So before the microarrays are beautiful when you show them, and essentially the last three patterns are gene patterns, as you know, and heat maps of non-healing edges of venous ulcers, and this is the control we're comparing to, and obviously there is an identifiable pattern of genes that really show and resemble non-healing. And then, of course, when you zoom in, you understand that there is about 1,500 of them that are statistically significant, deregulated in the chronic non-healing wound edge. And, of course, I will not go into details, but many of them relate to three important keratinocyte profiles One is keratinocyte differentiation, one is their migration ability and proliferation. And I will today talk about proliferation and migration primarily. But when you when you look at that profile, and then you go back and look at the patient samples and histology, what you actually see is that everything we saw in the microarrays is really true. First, you actually find tremendously hyperproliferative epidermis, and when you look and zoom in, you could actually appreciate that there are mitotic divisions suprabasally, which in differentiated epidermis never happens. And then if you look at this quantified layer, which is supposed to be without nuclei, and that's the cell layer that really needs to protect us, you appreciate that there is a lot of nuclei there. So what this means is that the cells really do not execute properly the differentiation process, but they also don't completely execute this activation process of wound healing, where they are proliferating, but they cannot move. So there is an inhibition of migration and loss of differentiation, if you will, at this non-healing edge. And so there is this rift that happens, and almost like a Grand Canyon, there is a big pile of cells that are kind of disoriented in space and time, and they cannot do anything what they are so well programmed to do. So that process really fascinates me, and we really try to explain it why. So, as I said, one of the characteristics of keratinocytes is hyperproliferation. And then the first question we wanted to ask is, so what is the fate of progenitor cells in chronic wounds? And we start looking at epidermal stem cells. And I will not go into details of that part of biology, but important to know, obviously, as any stem cells, they are kept in mostly quiescent time. But when the cycling needs to happen, then there are a couple of events and signaling molecules that need to play a role. One is that DNPR1 alpha needs to be downregulated, γ needs to be downregulated, and beta-catenin needs to be induced in order for epidermal stem cell to go from quiescent to cycling. Now, what we wanted to really look into is what happens with all these regulatory molecules in the context of a chronic wound patient. And then what we found out is, if you look at the left side of these two important molecules that are really downregulated, they're downregulated in